college preparing to take away most of your free time, you have to carve at least one day for yourself prior to the start. Hello folks, and welcome back to another video. Today's date is August 21st, 2025, and I am located next to the defunct Berea Depot restaurant in Berea, Ohio, next to CSX's Cleveland Short Line subdivision and Norfolk Southern's Chicago line. On this day, I was here to do at least one last big railfanning trip for the year before the next chapter of my college life would begin, this time at a four-year college. Today was an action-packed day, so without further ado, let's get started. The action would start the second I stepped out of the car when an eastbound Norfolk Southern mixed freight train appeared on the Chicago line, specifically NS 310, on a daily journey between Elkhart, Indiana and Binghamton, New York, with a treat trailing third today in the form of an ex-Conrail GP38-2. I would find that I would arrive at a good time as both railroads started popping off the second I got here. About 5 minutes after the 310 made its way east past Berea East Tower, then came westbound intermodal train 29P, on a daily run between Buffalo, New York and Chicago, Illinois. As 29P was making its way past Berea East Tower, some headlights appeared from a westbound train on CSX's Cleveland Shortline subdivision. I didn't get the symbol of this train, but I have reason to believe that it's CSX M277, on a daily run between Selkirk, New York, and Louisville, Kentucky. And the trains just kept on coming as another westbound would appear on Norfolk Southern Chicago line. This train would later be discovered as Norfolk Southern Intermodal 257, which runs on a daily basis between Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and Union Pacific's Global 2 Yard in Chicago, Illinois. Led by a former BNSF AC-44C6M, another eastbound would appear on Norfolk Southern Chicago line, that being an Autorac train. The Autorac train is believed to be a local train that brings these Autoracs from a yard out west, presumably towards Rockport Yard in Cleveland, Ohio. CSX was pretty slow for the 2 hours that I stayed here until another westbound showed up, which I have reason to believe is CSX I-157, a daily intermodal train that runs between Philadelphia, Pennsylvania and North Baltimore, Ohio. Norfolk Southern would prove to be the entertainer of the day by the time this train showed up. Slowly making its way eastbound on the Chicago line was Norfolk Southern's 64K, an as-needed loaded ethanol train coming out of Bensenville, Illinois off the CPKC Railroad for Seaware in New Jersey. With a combined Norfolk Southern and Canadian Pacific lash-up on the head end to comply with the cab signal requirements, 64K had a neat surprise as an N-train DPU. Ending a 5-year chase to see one of these locomotives, the N-train DPU of 64K was none other than Canadian Pacific SC70 ACU number 7015, wearing its retro maroon with block letter heritage paint scheme. Off-screen, after 7015 made its way through Berea, a westbound local freight on the Chicago line was finally turned loose by the dispatcher. Consisting of a GP38-3 and a few cars behind it, this local freight came out of Rockport Yard in Cleveland and is destined for one of the industries between here and Sandusky. CSX would step in one more time for the day when yet another westbound intermodal train would appear on the Cleveland Short Line subdivision, believed to be CSX I-161, a daily intermodal train that runs between Syracuse, New York and North Baltimore, Ohio. With one foreign movement on the Norfolk Southern Chicago line, a little while later, here comes another one, which came in the form of a westbound empty frac sand train. Judging by the BNSF pumpkin sandwich of power on the head end, this is Norfolk Southern 61G, an as-needed empty fracking sand train that comes out of Mingo Junction, Ohio, back for the BNSF Railway Interchange in Cicero, Illinois. Proving the big business of Northeast Ohio once again was yet another eastbound Norfolk Southern intermodal train on the Chicago line, this one in particular being NS-28B, which runs on a daily basis between Chicago, Illinois and Buffalo, New York. One more train would make its way past Berea East Tower before I left for the day. which was another intermodal train, this time heading westbound on Norfolk Southern Chicago line. This one in particular being Norfolk Southern Local Freight L15, which runs a round trip between Sandusky, Ohio and Maple Heights, Ohio, with low priority international shippers. After L15 made its way past Berea East Tower, I would then break off to get some lunch, and then move myself to another location. This photo of an LE-F&C Coke car can't really tell much, but I am located at a public park in the small town of Brewster, Ohio, which happens to be the main base of operations of the Wheeling and Lake Erie Railroad. Despite being the scrapped original plan of this trip, I decided to come over to Brewster to familiarize myself with this small town, as I have been expressing interest of catching regionals and short lines here in the state of Ohio, especially the Wheeling and Lake Erie Railroad. Since I only had an hour to spend here, the expectations were pretty low. After watching the yard crew moving around the cut of cars the LE-F&C Coke car was in, as well as checking out crossings on both ends of Brewster Yard for future reference, I almost walked away from this first visit to Brewster without seeing anything too interesting. That was the case until I caught a glimpse of the Wheeling and Lake Erie SD40-3 that was moving cars around the yard from a local convenience store next to the yard. Well, didn't get much over here, but at least we got the yard trimmer. Hope to be back here soon. As you could tell, the view from the convenience store was not the best, but considering that I wasn't expecting to see much, if anything, for this first visit, it was just fine for me. I would consider this, not just for myself, but for my viewers, a sneak preview of what's to come in the future. After catching a quick glimpse of the Wheeling and Lake Erie's operations in Brewster, I would then get back on the road for the trip home, which is where we now conclude yet another video. When it was all said and done with, the goals of the trip were met, and that's always a good thing. By the time this video comes out, I would have started or be well on my way in the next chapter of my academic life in college, specifically at a 4-year university. With that knowledge in mind, expect uploads to slow down considerably over the next few months, as I'm going to have to devote more of my time and gas money towards college. Despite that, I will still post on this channel when I can, as there will be time to do that, but just not as much as there is right now. If you enjoyed this video, consider checking out some other ones of mine. Leave a like or a comment down below to share your thoughts, subscribe if you're new, and tap the notifications bell if you want to be notified when new videos get posted here on the channel just like this. Until next time, this is All Ohio Railfan, signing out for the summer. See you soon!